Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is the woman who knows how to set personal boundaries, Alex Standy.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Alex, I got to tell you, I mean, you know as well as I do, I run Louise's gardening business. We're in the midst of the high point of the season. And if there is a better day to be doing a podcast, I don't know of a better day than this one. I needed this today more than anything else.
Why?
It's crazy right now. I mean,
it's bananas.
Well, there's a couple things going on. First of all, Louise and I are planning to go away next week. So we have to get everything set up, right?
Nice.
Crew has to have, and we just went on a hiring spree. So like we have this huge new crew of people in addition to our veterans. And it's the busiest time of year. And you put all that together, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So you need to have a little mental health.
Facts.
And that's what the show does. So welcome to the Mental Health Hour, right? And of course, we have a special guest joining us today. Her name is Nancy Pickard. And Nancy, she's quite a credentialed person. She's a certified integrative coach through the Ford Institute. This is like high level credentials going on. This is impressive stuff. She's certified as a breakthrough shadow coach, an empowered parent coach, a courage coach, a healing your heart coach, a leadership coach, a holistic. I mean, the list. This is a long list. I'm going to start with this, Nancy. Do you ever stop getting credentials?
No, I don't. I actually just am starting the certification next week with David Kessler on grief. So, no, I have a growth mindset. So I'm always like, what's the next thing that I could bring to my clients that I don't have as many tools as I could use. So healing your heart, which is one of my certifications, is amazing when it comes to divorce or estrangement. But I actually find that it's not as strong when somebody's actually lost a partner to death. It's very different. And so I just recently had 2 clients and I rewrote, like a couple of coaches and I rewrote healing your heart for loss instead of just for death, actually.
Oh, okay.
And it was definitely better, but I still felt like, I could use more. And so this is brand new. He's just doing this and I jumped on it.
I love the attitude.
Starts next week. Yeah.
Cool. No, I love the attitude. Well, first of all, because I honestly believe that the best of us are the ones who are constantly learning, constantly trying to improve, constantly trying to be better versions of who we are.
Bigger, better, braver.
Which is your motto. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
I like that motto.
It's a good motto, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really good. Where'd you come up with that one anyway?
Oh, God, it's so funny. I climbed Kilimanjaro at 61 and I thought I was going to write a book. What's your Kilimanjaro? So what is your next big thing that you want to do? You don't have to climb Kilimanjaro, but you might want to get into a relationship or leave a job or lose 50 pounds, whatever it is, right? But what's your Kilimanjaro was not going to get people to read my book. And so for months, I kept throwing out to my publisher and my boyfriend, who's also a writer, and to a friend of mine who's a book agent. I guess threw out everything I could think of and nobody liked everything. And then one night I sat up in the middle of the night and said, bigger, better, braver. And everyone loved it. And that was a download from the universe. So I say, thank you, universe. And that's the name of my book.
That's really great. First of all, when we get those downloads, when we get those messages like that. And second of all, when we can actually read them, detect them, pick up on them, which you did. So pat yourself on the back. Well done.
Yeah, no, it was a definite download from the universe. And because everyone loved it. So it was like, of course they loved it. It wasn't my idea. It came from the universe. We all love
it. That's fabulous. And how'd you get into coaching? I mean, I know there's always an interesting story there. That's why I asked that question, because I've interviewed a lot of coaches and there's always, it's usually some story that has some kind of crisis that was a personal crisis that led into, I want to help people in the same way. Yeah. I'm guessing it's the same thing with you.
Yeah. You know what? We coach from our, like, not our wounds, but from our scars. So we see what it's done for us and then we want to help other people. And so For me, I really, the catalyst was I got divorced after 26 years. It was not my idea. It was not something I wanted. And it really broke me. And it took me a really long time to recover, to stop being the victim in my story, to stop judging my life by his life. It took me even longer to recognize that I was being other referenced. You know, I saw myself through the eyes of how he saw me. So when he no longer wanted me, then I saw myself as not worthy anymore. And it took me a really long time to remember who I was and to love myself and trust myself and to become self-referred. You know, I know how good I am. I know what I bring to the table, and I don't need anybody else to tell me that. So the biggest lesson for me was that I went through my whole probably first 50 years of my life thinking that I was half of a whole. And the reason I was so strong was because I had the other half. And now I know I'm whole all by myself. I'm worthy just because I'm breathing. And that was a huge lesson for me. And I want other people to learn that.
It's a really important point too, because I think a lot of people look to relationships, primary relationships, to fill them out, so to speak, to you know, fill in the holes. Right. And I don't think most people who are in that space realize that is the basis for an unstable relationship.
Right.
It's a relationship that really can't survive. But so many people go for it.
Even recently, just like I'm home, my dog got really badly bitten 2 weeks ago from a pit bull, and I'm still sort of recovering from it. And so I can tell that I'm like not that happy in the moment. And I realize that, well, I can't, that has to come from me. Like I can't think about like, well, why is it my partner like working harder to make me happy or this or that? It's an inside job. I can't put it on anybody else. So I have to sit in it and figure out like, what is it? What are these emotions trying to show me? And then do my own work. You know, I mean, even though we're coaches, we're in it all the time.
That's right. Yeah. My wife has a background, former psychotherapist. And when you're a therapist, your coaches, so to speak, they call them supervisors. Other therapists who you quote report to unquote, meaning that they're there to help you work through your stuff so that you can be there for your clients. And she just kept talking about that over and over again, particularly early on in our relationship, how vitally important it is to have that kind of support when you're providing support to somebody else.
Right. And we do it. I first of all, I'm always getting another certification. So I'm always in the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm always working on myself. I just hung up from a class from the same, my organization that I have a lot of my certifications. We're starting one called Jump. Jump and your life will appear. So I'm actually going to be doing two at the same time, but that's one that I mentor in. But so you're always in the conversation. And like when I started this class today, I was thinking, I don't even know what I'm jumping to. Like I started the class because I'm in the certification. I need to, but I haven't even thought about what's my next jump. And so I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, well, that's important. It's important to get that part out. Yeah.
Yeah.
You also made a really interesting reference. Well, that was part of the phrase actually. You talked about being other referenced. What did that mean?
It means that I saw myself through the eyes of my ex-husband. And so for 26 or 28 years, you know, he thought that I was amazing. And so I thought I was amazing. And then when he no longer wanted me anymore, it actually didn't matter what other people said to me. Like if I would be dating and the guy would say, oh my God, you're so smart and you're so beautiful and you're such a good athlete and all of this, I would be thinking in my head, what do you know? Like,
oh dear.
You know, like, what do you know? Then you obviously aren't any smarter because, you know, my husband, who I trusted and believed knew me so well, he no longer wanted me. And so, you know, so it's that kind of stuff. You need to be able to love and trust yourself and stay in alignment with everything you tell yourself you're going to do so that you can love and trust yourself. And then you won't need somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, boy, that really is true. In
That's
fact,
so true.
as you're talking there, it occurs to me that the other person that you're referencing and that other reference that you're talking about, that reference is basically a way of saying, I don't refer to myself. I depend on somebody else for my sense of identity.
Yes, exactly. And I've got news for you. There's a zillion of us out there that are other referenced, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They judge how happy they are from the people in their lives. If they're happy, you can be happy.
Mm.
You know, you're taking your temperature by taking other people's temperature.
Yeah. It's very easy to do. Very easy. I like to refer to Alex. In fact, you heard in the intro, I refer to her as the woman who really knows how to set personal boundaries.
I know, I saw that.
Right.
Yeah.
And Alex, when I recorded that, what I was thinking about is stories you've told about, you know, your own experiences in life and so forth, where you are really good at setting boundaries. And in that context, I think about how you could easily, that you had many opportunities in your life where you could easily have been doing exactly what we've been talking about here. You could have become other reference. You could have been making your sense of identity dependent upon somebody else, but you learned kind of the hard way that that's really not the way to go, right?
No, it's not the way to go. You got to be a whole person by yourself before you can be help to anybody else.
Yeah,
especially that before you can be of help to anybody else.
Right.
Yeah,
you got to have something to give before you can give it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Can't give from an empty wallet, you know?
And you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Before you can, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's one of my certifications as a boundary coach. So that's a great conversation for
There
us.
you go.
Yeah. I love
a good boundary this time.
I love a good boundary conversation.
So how many boundaries have you set this week? No, I mean, we can go.
I am a boundary badass. Yeah.
I actually had a boundary test this week.
You had boundary
test?
A boundary test, yeah.
What happened?
I had previously, Walt knows this, I had previously set some boundaries to have no contact with my father. And I'm getting pressure from his side of the family, his ex-wife, my stepmother, who I'm still like cool with. And she's like, you only have one father, blah, blah, blah. Excuses. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not my problem though. He made this way. That's not my issue. That if he can't communicate, that's his problem. If he can't handle having kids in his life, again, that's his problem. That's not a me problem just because he's my father.
Right.
He hasn't proved it.
Good.
But I did stop and think about it for a day. She was like, that's your only father and blah, blah, blah. You could be dying soon and you never know. And just all the family pressure. And I'm just like, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I'm going through a lot of medical stuff. Maybe he should know and And I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. Not going to do that. I fell for it for about 5 seconds. And then I was like, nah.
You don't take
I was like,
long.
who was that? That was not Alex. That was not Alex answering that phone call.
Okay. Yeah.
Families put pressure.
Yep, they put pressure, and in the process of putting pressure, they basically, this is one example of how other people provide mirrors to us. They mirror back to us that which we most need to pay attention to.
Right.
Yes.
And what we're putting out there. And when you put that combination together, you end up with situations like this where you're challenged, and challenges happen.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting piece out of, I mean, you didn't actually say it because you're actually a very kind person, Alex, but you could have said, well, the ball's in his court. I mean, it's not like he didn't have the opportunity for all these years to reach out and do something. Why hasn't he done anything? If it's really that important.
He does it in a sneaky way. Like, he's had my phone number. My phone number hasn't changed in 20 years. So he's had my number. But for him to go around to other people that know me and complain that he has no relationship with me, to get them to tell me, you know what I mean? Like, just that part about it was already, I'm all set. You can't even confront me on your own. So how are we going to have a conversation?
We're not even confront. How about just call you up?
Exactly.
That would be a good breakthrough, right?
How about a text message? How about that? Let's start.
Get it started.
Yeah. But you can go tell my whole life story to all my friends from high school, hoping that they'll contact me. Like, no, bro, please.
Yeah. Well, some people just don't really want to grow up.
Exactly. And I don't have time for it.
Yeah. I love that attitude. I don't have time for it. If you had too many of those people, Nancy, you wouldn't have enough clients. I mean, right
Yes,
there.
that's true.
Well, but there really is a lot of estrangement going on between adult children and their older parents. It's an interesting, I think it's a phenomena that probably didn't exist anywhere, the percentage that it does now, and it's interesting. I find it really interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds that are just saying, I'm out of here.
I'm done. It's not worth it.
I'm done. I know. But I have the parents, so I don't have the you clients. I have the really sad 60, 70, and 80-year-old clients
wondering what's going on and why.
Yeah, and they're so
what did they do wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's sad. Estrangement is sad. Even when it's justified, there's still, it's an incompletion. I call them incompletions, and incompletions, regardless of why they happen, they weigh on you. They weigh on you. And, I don't like incompletions at all. Like if even as simple as an assignment, I have to do it right away. Like even if I have 3 weeks to do it, I'm done the next day because I can't stand it. Weighs on me, and I don't like that feeling. So, I like to have people. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I say that, there are people that used to be on my couch. And now I've moved them to my front porch, and they're no longer welcome on my couch, but I feel better with them on my front porch than totally out of my life, so that if I bump into them or something happens, I don't feel like I can reach out. So I move them off my couch and onto the front porch, and they can stay there.
You made a very interesting observation, though, that there is a relatively recent phenomenon in which there is a lot more estrangement between adult children and parents. And my first initial reaction was to think back to, in past times, what would have happened is, because everything happened within the family unit, and the family unit didn't break up a whole lot. I mean, the whole idea of children moving to different areas of the country or around the world was a relatively unknown phenomenon. It happened occasionally, but it was not very common. Now it's quite common. So I suspect what happened during those times was, it was just putting up with it. And the estrangement was probably there, and that's where a lot of issues came up within families. They would constantly bubble to the surface because they were there, but because you couldn't do anything about it, you just put up with it.
Right.
But now we don't have to put up with it anymore. So it raises a few questions in my mind. One of which is, since you're dealing primarily with the parents, the ones who all of a sudden find they can't really make the connections anymore. Now, because they're the older ones, they've been around longer, so to speak. They have more experience, so to speak. I'm wondering how many of them are, because of that experience, willing to look inside rather than trying to look outside for the solution. Because all of these solutions are inside solutions. But the question becomes, how willing is a person to go inside? And I'm wondering, do the advanced years actually help people want to look inside?
Well, I can only speak for the couple that I have. I have 3 clients in my history who are estranged from their adult, and they're very sad, and they really want to make amends, because honestly, worse than losing the kids is losing the grandkids. So, and I can tell you, I have 4 grandchildren, and that would just totally destroy me. So I get it. I totally get it. A lot of the things that have happened with the kids as they were growing up. And so it's sometimes it's less about what's happening in the moment than how controlling these parents may have been. And the kids are just like, they don't want it. I mean, I have to tell you that way before I was a boundary coach, my son, who's now 42, when he was in his early 30s, way before boundary work, said to me, I know you've lived a big life and you have a lot of great ideas and a lot of opinions, and I know where to go if I want it. But if I don't ask for your opinion, I don't want it. And I was, my mother and father, who were 30 years older than me, were still giving me their opinion. And here I was being told by my son that I couldn't give him my opinion. And that was like a wow. I mean, I took it. I heard him. He wasn't kidding. And so I do wonder sometimes if people are not getting the messages because they were brought up to believe that as a parent, their opinion, they're entitled to their opinion and they're entitled to share their opinion. And the reality is that the kids from today that are in their 30s and 40s, they don't feel that way. They don't feel that way. And so I learned my lesson. You know, I tell my friends that I can have blood dripping down my throat from biting my tongue, but that I won't give my opinion unless I know it's going to be received, or that I say, you know, are you willing to hear what I think? But generally I just let them, it's their journey. If they fall, they fall. And if they don't, they don't. It's their journey. You got to let everyone have their own journey.
But in order to come to that conclusion, you had to go inside and you have to say, okay, am I willing to accept responsibility for what my role is here? And am I willing to accept that role? Am I willing to thrive in that role? Yeah. Or am I going to fight it? What's it going to be?
Yeah. It's really sad because I think that when the kids have made the decision, and I mean, I was very involved in one of those relationships, and I kept trying to get the parents to not become estranged from their son. And eventually that son was pushing them and pushing them and pushing them till I finally said, I get it. I get it. You know, he was like this, like it really was more that he was trying to become estranged, and he kept trying and trying and trying to make them, you know, like in The King and I, like how low can you go? That kind of a thing. And I finally I said, I get it, you know, do what you need to do. I get it. Even though I was like trying so hard to save that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the only people who can save a relationship are the people in the relationship, and they both have to want to save it. Otherwise, it's not going to be saved. They both have
to be willing to do the work, and they both need to step off the soapbox of being right.
Yeah, that's not easy to do, is it?
That's a hard hill to say.
Yeah, but it comes down to, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Or even like with your dad, and I don't know anything that's going on, but the day will come where you won't have an opportunity anymore to make peace. And so you have to really make peace with the fact that you won't be making peace and know that that's okay. And then that's a decision you made, and that's where you are. I'm just glad that I haven't had to deal with that. And, you know, God willing, I never get it from my end of things. So, and I think about it. I'm careful. I really am careful. You have to be careful.
I think another piece of the puzzle from my perspective is, no matter what relationship I'm talking about, I'm going to go, you know, with my own relationships, and the ones, there are some that I have pushed away and there are others that I have retained because I wanted to retain them. And for the ones that I pushed away, well, first of all, are there any of them that I would want under certain circumstances to pull back? I think that's part of what growth is all about, is reevaluating at times. Right. You know, do the arrangements right now suit me, or do they not suit me? And very often they continue to suit me just the way they are. Very often I'm very, very happy with the way they are. But every once in a while, you know, life brings stuff to us, right? We experience things come to us out of the blue. Some things we don't like come to us out of the blue. And there are always opportunities for us to decide, okay, how am I going to respond in this situation? And if those situations involve somebody who I had previous experience with, previous relationship with, and I pushed them away, I get one more opportunity to decide, okay, do I want to keep it that way? How do I feel about it? And the reason I'm saying all this is, as my life has gone on, what I've come to realize is it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to want to change the way those relationships are. In most cases, I want to keep them, you know, whatever the distance is or whatever the closeness is, I want to keep them that way. But it's more about, what am I willing to do within myself to feel good about myself with my relationships? Because I can actually tie myself down to a point where I'm not growing anywhere with any of the relationships. I've been there. I've done that. And that's not a happy place to be. It's a very unhappy place to be. But I've also found on the flip side that when I approach any of my existing relationships with a different way of thinking about the relationship, different way of thinking about what I want, different way of thinking about who the other person is, just changing perspective, I guess is what I'm talking about. And any healthy growing person, their perspective is going to change anyway over time. That's certainly been true for me. So once again, it's an opportunity with my new perspective. How do I feel about this person? How do I feel about my relationship with this person? And sometimes, not very often, but sometimes I find, I want to make a little shift here, see what happens. And recognize that the shift has to be made within me. That to me is the biggest part of it. I can't change the other person. I can't make the other person behave the way I want them to behave. I can't make them the kind of person that I want them to be. So I've left that behind, which I think is probably one of the most important things for anyone to do who's tied to that other reference thing that you were talking about before.
Right.
But by the same token, I also can grow myself. I can find ways to appreciate things I didn't appreciate before. I can find ways to appreciate things I didn't like so much before. And in the process, how I can feel about a relationship might change. So the work is actually me going inside and saying, how do I feel now compared to where I felt, say, 5 years ago or 2 years ago or 3 seconds ago with this relationship that I may have kept at arm's length. And those are the situations in which I find myself saying, every once in a while, you know what? I want to change this one because I can see that relationship differently now. I can see that person differently now. So I'm willing to at least, just reach out a little bit, see what happens. And if I don't like what happened, I can just leave it where it is.
Right. I also think you're not the only one changing.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The reality is that you and this other person may have both evolved. And so what you still have is the love that you once had for that person. And you may both have evolved to different people now. And so if you get back together, you still have that old love, yet you're both evolved people. So you don't really know. I find it hard to believe that one of you has grown and the other one is stuck in the past. Everybody evolves. Hopefully everybody does more inner work as they go. I don't know about your father, Alex, but I'm just saying, I'm just saying that, and I mean, because I'm a coach and I'm in this work, my parents both passed in the last 2 years, but before they died, I was forever like trying to get my mom to see things differently and to understand that you can't always give your opinion or you don't have to say what's on your, you don't have to always say everything that's on your mind. And, I worked with her, to try to get her to evolve because she grew up with one set of beliefs. And I'm like, Mom, that doesn't really work today. You really have to be more open-minded and you don't have the right to always give your opinion, those kinds of things. So it's an interesting journey.
Or you do have the right to give the opinion. You just don't have the right to assume that the other person is going to want to receive it.
Right. Yeah. Your opinion is not always welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can be a hard one for some people. I know not so much with this, but where my mom was concerned, my mom passed in July 2019. Toward the end of her life, I was realizing my relationship with her was good. But I was realizing that there was something about my mom that I'd never quite gotten a handle on until like the last couple of years of her life. And this had a lot to do with her background. She grew up as a child of the Great Depression. She was influenced by all those events that happened. And she grew up in a very poor family. So she got really the brunt of what happened during that time period. And one of the things that happened with her, not so much happened with her, it happened within her, or didn't happen within her, perhaps is a better way of saying it, is she never really learned how to decide what she wanted in life. And in those last 2 years, it really became clear to me. I mean, I would ask her point blank things like, well, what do you like? Not what do you like to do, but just what do you like, period. And she couldn't answer the question.
Yeah.
And I had to actually come to terms with the fact that it was very likely that she was going to pass without her ever answering that question.
She didn't know. It was her I mean, that's the shadow work. So
Yeah.
her voice never mattered. Her opinions didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's 80 or 90 years old.
Right.
And that's not going to change. She didn't actually ever ask herself, what do I want? What do I need? What would make me happy? You know.
I think she actually could have changed if she wanted to. I don't think she really wanted to, because that would mean addressing stuff, like you said, shadow work, addressing questions within herself, within her own mind, her subconscious, that she didn't want to address.
Right. Right.
So I had to be okay with just respecting that. Okay, that's her choice.
Yeah, it's her journey.
Yeah. And
inner work is hard. You know, a lot of people don't want to do the work. I can't tell you how many people will say, oh, you know, so-and-so, I gave your number to a friend of mine. They said that they'd be interested in working with you. Never hear from them, you know, all the time. And it's because they think it's a good idea in theory, and they can see how much the other person has gotten out of it. But really digging in and looking at your stuff is scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is, which is kind of odd, actually, because when you actually do that kind of work, it isn't all that bad. Yeah,
I love it
for a while.
I love it. I'm so different.
I think one of the things that I thought early on, way before I even heard the term shadow work, I had some idea what it was. I would refer to it as like therapy, but early on, my impression was, oh my God, you're going to go through massive pain and it never ends.
Right? Yeah. No.
That was one of the impressions I had.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And of course, it's not true at all, but boy, does it seem true.
Yeah. Well, it's also not true with life coaching because it's action oriented. So you're not only uncovering things, but you're taking small action steps to change. So there is change. You're not like week after week after week sitting on the couch, you know, going over your childhood and all your wounds and bleeding all over the couch.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
That definitely sounds worse. That sounds miserable, actually.
Yeah. Ours are little pinpricks.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the other odd thing, because when you actually start delving into what are the early influences that have troubled me and carried on for a period of time, when you finally identify them, God, it's a matter of seconds to work through them. When you confront them really head on, it doesn't take long at all. I would have thought it would have taken weeks, months, and it's actually pretty darn quick. So what we're afraid of is actually just purely in our mind of being afraid of it.
Well, what's in our subconscious that's ruling our operating system that we're not aware of, when you actually bring it to the light into your conscious mind, it's from your childhood. And so it made sense and kept you safe as a child. But as an adult, you actually can see, wow, oh my God, I can so see how that developed and how it helped me. But I can also see how it's been costing me. And so once you give it light, it's not so hard. It's still like, you know, it's onions. You got to peel away. It can come back again and again and again. But the reality is you can see it from your adult conscious mind and recognize that it no longer supports you. You know, you are worthy. You are safe alone. Your voice matters. You're not broken. You are lovable. All these shadow beliefs of, I'm not good enough. My voice doesn't matter. I have to be perfect to be loved. I have to control everything to be safe. I'll never be chosen. I'm not good with money. Spiritual people don't care about money. These are all examples of beliefs that we get from our childhood that no longer support our adult self.
And there's an interesting side point that which you kind of alluded to for a moment there, which is that very often these sore points, these often traumatic points from childhood, become the basis for tremendous stuff that comes later on. Like they become like the springboard, let's call it. You know, you have this really bad traumatic event happens, but it becomes a springboard to having marvelous stuff coming out of it. And then you look back and you say, wow, that actually served a purpose. I sure didn't feel like it at the time.
Sure.
You know, but later on I could see, whoa, that actually helped me. Who would have thought?
Yeah. But that's the thing about drama and trauma is that you grow from it. You know, what's the thing about no pain, no gain kind of thing. You know, I never wanted to be divorced and I was brokenhearted, but the woman I am today would not have been that woman. I would still be other referenced. I'd still be living under his shadow. And, you know, I mean, I have a story. We were separated for maybe 6 or 8 months and I was living in New Jersey and he was in Manhattan. And I went and did a Century bike ride. We were both big bikers. And we got to this place in the New York City, like 100-mile ride where they had a gate up because of traffic. So if you got there before a certain time, you couldn't go yet. And all of a sudden I look over to the person who pulled up next to me on the bike and it was him.
Oh my.
I look over, I say hi, you know, and the gates go up and I don't see him again until the last mile, which was like the Triborough Bridge. So it was the only hill on the whole thing. And I saw him in front of me and I thought, I've stayed behind him my whole marriage. You know, I'm taking this ride. And I passed him and I get on the ferry. We're both on the ferry. And he literally said to me, "You're such a brat. I can't believe you had to pass me." And I looked at him. I said, I have stayed behind you for 26 years. You've already left. So I decided to just do my own ride. And he looked at me and he said, you know, like, good one. Like he caught it. He got it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he got it. Yeah.
That's great.
But it was like, I'm thinking, what do I have to lose? I can finally win a race, you know, and own it. I don't have to make excuses for why I won.
Beautiful. Hey, well, that's a nice addendum to the story then.
I forgot about that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
Well, the fact that you forgot it, that's actually, I think, fairly common. We tend to dismiss the good stuff that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That was good, actually.
They're important to celebrate those things.
Yeah.
Now I have a question. What is shadow work?
So shadow work, it's a Jungian term, and it's really for those beliefs from our childhood that are formed to keep us safe. Something happens, there's an emotional event, and we give it a meaning because we're not emotionally mature enough to understand it. We all do it. No matter if you have a great childhood or you've had trauma in your childhood, we all have shadow beliefs. So an example from my own life was that I was 5 years old and I was playing with a lighter. And I put my whole party dress up in flames and, you know, I was burnt from my neck down.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And they were all 1st and 2nd degree burns. So even though I was in the hospital for a week, I don't have burns on my body. I didn't get in trouble because my parents were just so happy I was alive. And so I didn't really give it a lot of meaning until fast forward another 45 years. I was in a car accident. Again, I almost died, but I didn't. And I wasn't really badly hurt, but I had PTSD and I was working with a shadow coach at the time. So she said, there's something going on here. One of your subpersonalities has like something that's triggered from this accident. And she took me into a meditative state and she asked me to wait until one of my subpersonalities showed up. And all of a sudden I saw myself at 5 years old in my little party dress. I felt like I was in an exorcism and I was oh my God, like it's me at 5 years old. And she said, what does she want you to know? So I closed my eyes and I waited and I said, she wants me to know I'm not safe alone. Now think about it. That makes perfect sense. I put myself on fire. I wasn't safe alone.
Yeah.
So that was my shadow belief. And it came with me my whole life. I was a serial relationship person. I always was in a relationship. I always had a ton of friends. So it kept me safe until it didn't, until I was divorced and could have enjoyed my life and could have recognized the gifts I had and where I was in my life and all of those things. But instead I kept thinking, I have to fix this picture. I'm not safe, you know, without even knowing I wasn't safe alone. I didn't feel safe alone. Like, how could I be happy without a partner? Until I uncovered it. And the moment I uncovered it, not only was my PTSD from the accident gone, but so was my neediness of having to be married, to be in relationship. So
what was that like to have that breakthrough? What did that feel like?
Yeah.
well, those breakthroughs are amazing because, and I have a lot of shadow beliefs. We all do. But that one, because I was already thinking about becoming a coach, I could already say in my head, oh my God, she must think like she hit the jackpot with that one. Like that was so big. Like when my clients uncover these big aha moments, I'm like, I'm as surprised as they are. I'm like, wow, that was so cool. So yeah, it was big. It was definitely a big one, but we all have them and they're all interesting and they also try to keep us safe. And then the other part of the shadow work is what's called underlying commitments. And that's the strategy. It's the promise we make to ourselves, also in our subconscious, to keep the belief alive. So my underlying commitment was to never be alone, to be the best girlfriend, to make myself digestible to everybody else so that they would always want me. That was my underlying commitment.
Really good.
Yeah.
So something else you made reference to before, I want to bring it into the conversation. You talked about the victim story, which we've talked about here in the past, but I'm curious to know what your take is on that victim story, because we certainly have lots of them.
Yeah. Everything that happens to us, we think it happens to us instead of for us. And we see ourselves as the victim in our story. And the sad part about being the victim in your story is that it's very disempowering and you're stuck in it. If you're the victim, there's no way to really climb out of it. Instead of seeing that you're actually the co-creator, and that even if it's just from your shadow beliefs that attracted the situation and people into your life, that sometimes that's all that is yours, is your belief that you came into the relationship or that you attracted that person into your life. That could be all the co-creation is, but it's still a co-creation. And once you can recognize that you're not the victim, but you're part of what happened, then you can move into acceptance and surrender. And acceptance and surrender is just saying, all right, I get it. Like, I didn't want to be divorced. It wasn't my idea, but this is where I am. And so now where am I going with this? What am I going to do? Maybe I didn't want to lose my job, or I'm 45 years old and I really wanted to have children and I never did. But like, this is my reality. This is where I am. What can I do now? And you can't do anything as long as you remain the victim in the story.
One of the key components, of course, of victimhood is a sense of powerlessness. And I'm sure we can talk about that, but there's also another thing that comes up. I imagine you have run into it in people that you have worked with as clients or people you've just known, which is that sometimes victims find that their victimhood is a form of power.
Yeah.
We ain't ready for that conversation, though.
Yeah, but it's true. And it keeps if you're the victim in your story, you don't have to look at your own crap. You don't have to, if your belief is that, I'll never be chosen, then you don't even have to look at why you're not being chosen. You have that belief and that's enough, and you're the victim, you'll never be chosen. Instead of, I say I want this, but what I'm experiencing is this. I say I want to be in a relationship, but what I'm experiencing is seeing what's wrong with every guy I date, and leaving them before they can leave me. I say I want to lose 50 pounds, but what I'm experiencing, and then you can say, my whole family's fat and I was brought up on this and we believe this and love and comfort and food and it's all entwined. Or you can say, so that's your belief. That's your victimhood. Instead of saying, I really want to lose 50 pounds, but what I'm experiencing is having cookies every night or binging, watching TV and being on autopilot and not recognizing what I'm eating. So victimhood allows you to not take control and make the changes that you need to make. As long as you're the victim, then you're helpless and hopeless for change.
Well, I think there's also another component too, which is that now this is not true for all people who experience victimhood. This is true for a small subset, but there is a small subset of people who are in that victimhood status who really treat it as a status and who use it manipulatively. They'll use it to guilt other people. You know, you have made me a victim and therefore you owe me in some way.
Yes. Oh, for sure. It's a very low level of you owe me, or you did this, so you owe me, or I've had this happen, so I deserve this. Mm-hmm. It's a low level of intelligence, of emotional intelligence, really, of thinking that way. But I listen, I know people who are drama queens and they define themselves by their drama. Like when I work with them, they actually have the belief that without the drama, they would be boring.
Sure.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
It's crazy because really what happens as an adult is that everyone's sick of your drama. Mm-hmm. We're not buying into it. We're not interested in it. But you haven't learned that and you're still shoveling it out.
Well, and it's not terribly surprising in one sense because we live in a society that's based on drama. Yeah. So their society keeps mirroring to them, well, everybody else is getting by with drama. Look at all the gains other people make with their drama. Why should I let go of mine?
Yeah. This same person actually told somebody, you just have to guilt them into it. Guilt works every time.
Wow.
They're actually that open about it. That's pretty
we out here.
Unbelievable, right? Yeah. Unbelievable. I know.
Well, I mean, I've seen it in people in law of attraction circles. It is one of the hardest challenges to face up to, facing up to the idea that I am responsible for what I attract into my own life.
Right.
And there are some people who just refuse to do that under certain circumstances. They say, yes, it's always true, except for this one area.
Yeah. How can it be? Yeah.
Yeah. And that area it's always something that is very dark. It's very, certainly represents some kind of situation that nobody would ever say they favor, parent, losing their child or, somebody being attacked by somebody else or, something like that. And so in those circumstances, they're going to say, well, yeah, it doesn't really apply there because I mean, that's just an innocent person being, affected in some adverse way. We certainly wouldn't blame them. They always bring blame into it. Right. Blame was never actually part of it in the first place, but they bring the blame into it. It's a really big challenge for a lot of people. Yeah. Not a lot, but a significant number. I don't want to say a lot. It makes it sound like a large chunk of the population, but there is a significant piece of the population. It's a big challenge for them, especially when they encounter these ideas. How am I going to get around that? And they basically say, I'm not going to get around that. That's just, it's there. It's a part of life. And, the law of attraction doesn't apply there. So that's all there is to it.
So interesting.
Yeah.
It's resistance.
It is. It's huge resistance.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest challenge of all, trying to face up to that stuff. Because I think all of us want to have that abundant life. Even those of us who don't know anything about LOA, we all want to have that abundant life.
Yeah.
Most of us maybe don't even think that it's possible. But even among those of us who do think it's possible, we struggle. We struggle a lot. And the hardest lesson of all is recognizing that we have to go inside to make the whole thing shift. Yeah.
And that every choice matters.
Yeah.
And that you're 100% responsible for all of your choices.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. People don't want to have to. I have clients, to me, because I know that I'm capable of following through, the thought that every choice matters and I'm responsible, that's a gift for me. Cause then I know, okay, great. If it's just me, then I can handle it. Mm-hmm. Other people are like, oh no, I don't want that. They want to blame other people. They don't want to be responsible.
Yeah.
So like when really bad things happen, it is hard to figure out like, well, what's the gift here and what's the lesson? And I get that. And I don't ever want to have to get into a conversation with a parent whose child died in a horrible way. there are some things that let's just leave that off the table. But I've had clients that like have been in a relationship, one in particular, with a sociopath. And I dated a sociopath too. They're very addicting because number one, they're like chameleons. They sell themselves to be everything that you need. Right. And then it's like an addiction because the love and the makeup sex is so high. And then the fighting so it becomes this roller coaster addiction, and it's very hard to get over them. And it's very hard to also, then it becomes very hard to see how you could have anything to do with it because that person is such a sociopath. But what I tell those clients is, they were married 35 years and the first person they dated was the sociopath. And I was married 26 years, same sort of thing. And I say, you were such an innocent. You were like candy in his hand. But I can tell you that you'll never fall for another sociopath. So that was your co-creation. You were an innocent. You believed everything that he sold you. And it's easy to do, but you will never fall for that again. And
what a great perspective.
Yeah. And so that's how you can sort of see how your co-creation could be that simple. It's just your beliefs that you brought in that attracted that man. You were so broken in that moment and such an innocent in that moment that he swept right in.
But the lesson that you got out of it, that you took away from it, was I will never fall for that again because now I know what to look for.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that was the only way I could get her out of the victim mode. That actually took weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, usually that's quicker, but with a sociopath, it really is hard because they're so evil and twisted and good at what they do that it is hard to see how you had anything to do with it because you came into that relationship so open-hearted and they were so evil that it's hard to take responsibility. But once she saw that, she was able to then start working on change.
It's amazing how it takes one insight.
Yeah.
Just one different way, one new perspective, one new way of thinking about something to just shift the whole conversation around.
It's her aha moment. Like, okay, I get it. Yeah. I see it. And now I can make a change from here.
And that gives everybody hope, no matter what the situation is.
Right.
Because all you got to do is find that one aha moment. Which is really what the shadow work is all about. It's finding the aha moment.
So, and there's so many of them. I mean, we all have them for so many. I was just having a conversation it was funny because I was walking up the mountain with a friend of mine who's always on a diet and her daughter who is a little heavy right now. And I was saying how like I grew up with the shadow belief that love and life means always struggling with weight. Because I had a mother who was always on a diet. And when I brought that up, the two of them like looked at each other and the girl said, tell me about it, and I'm like, yeah, well, you definitely got some shadow work going on there, girlfriend. I can tell you right away because it's true. We all have them.
It's funny how this stuff pops up. I think one thing that is happening is that it's popping up more often. I mean, we talked earlier about how, because people are able to move not just away from home, but far away from home. There's sort of a diaspora that goes on now, among the population as children become, adult children. Because of that, I think we're starting to see a lot of stuff looked at that wasn't being looked at before.
Maybe, but it's like, my parents, I said this earlier, they both died in the last 2 years, and my sisters and I they could not have had better daughters taking care of them to the day they died. And they were amazing parents and we were amazing children in their death. And I feel sad that there are a lot of good parents out there that are losing that because they were good parents, but their children it's much easier today to just write them off and not really put together how much they really had did do for you in your life. And I don't mean it as like, I didn't feel obligated to do it. It was a heart. We all wanted to be there and do that for our parents.
Mm-hmm.
But, I see some of my clients who are in their 80s and they're going to die alone. And I find that so sad. I really do. So I don't want to get on that subject again, but I do think that kids today it's easier for them to walk away than than my generation. Like our generation versus your generation, I'm assuming, right? And so and it's not a blame thing. I'm just saying that you're right. The kids move out, they're gone. And especially if you didn't have a good relationship, but the 2 out of the 3 that I know of, they did have a good relationship, but maybe they were controlling. Maybe they were opinionated. But they certainly weren't abusive, and they certainly tried to be good parents. I know that because I know that, but it can happen anyway. And then there you are.
Very interesting perspective. It's one of the things that I love about doing this show. I encounter all kinds of fascinating perspectives, and you presented one more really, really good one. So thank you for that. Before we part company for the day, though, you can't just go away. You have to actually share some information about how do we find out about your book, and how do we find out about you, and how, if somebody wants to work with you, how do they reach out to you? So who's in on all that stuff?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in your show notes, right? I think I sent you my media kit. Okay, so you've got all this stuff, but. So my book is Bigger, Better, Braver, Conquer Your Fears, Embrace Your Courage, and Transform Your Life. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a soft covered, paperback. It's also the Audible, which is me. It was a bigger, better, braver moment for me to do my own Audible. And if you want to have a free call to see if coaching with me works for you, that's also will be on your notes, but that's a link on my website. So my book is on my website, all of my different certifications, the free discovery call, a free chapter to my book. All of that is on my website. And that's nancypickardlifecoach.com. And I have a new course that's on this company called Gen Connect You. It's called Career Strategies for Achieving Your Greatest Potential. And you have a code that's BBB Success for 20% off that course.
I'll make
and
sure
that's sort of like the Bigger, Better, Braver, for the working. It's really for a working woman, actually. How to set healthy boundaries, how to move beyond your shadows, and all that good stuff. So basically, it's all on my website.
Okay, so we'll link everybody to the website, and we'll include the code so they can get the 20% off.
Great.
So, fabulous stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Yeah, we explored topics in a different way. I like that whenever we do that.
It's fun.
Different way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun, and it's also educational in the sense that I really do believe, I've said this many times, that the best thing we can do is get as many different perspectives as we can possibly get.
Yeah.
The more perspectives we get, the more we grow, the more we improve, the better our lives get, and the more we have to appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like the organic, I've been doing so many podcasts, and I meet such cool people, like very like-minded people. And it's really, really interesting. And I love it. So, thank you for that.
Oh, we're very glad to have had you. And Alex, I'm so glad that you're continuing to heal and get better. Stay on that path. All right.
Yeah.
Promise me.
Oh, did I told you the tube is out, right?
You did. Yes. That's fabulous. Congratulations.
As of Tuesday, I am free.
That is so important. So good. All right. Well, we're going to trust that you're going to stay on that path because we love you.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Stay healthy.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Great. Bye.